talk a little bit about the SEC West. We both love football. He happens to be an Alabama fan. I happen to be an Auburn fan. And we got a Georgia fan filming us, by the way. Thank you, Ethan. But here's the current SEC Western standings. And we were just kind of figuring out what the theoretical probability that each team has to actually win the SEC West from right now. You know, as an Auburn fan, a lot of us, you know, after last week's loss, a lot of people was upset and all that, but Auburn still got a decent chance to actually win the SEC West, and we're going to kind of show you how this works.
That 6% really doesn't do it justice. They probably have a little bit better chance than that, but we'll get into that later.
That's right. All right, we're going to start with Ole Miss. Now, Ole Miss, as you can see, they got 2 games left, and both of these are conference games, and Ole Miss being 4-2, they have to win both of those games. And what me and Chase is going to talk a little bit more about the experimental probability or what expected value means. I'm going to just go with theoretical probability. If you flip a coin, in theory, it's going to land on heads or tails. It's a 1 in 2 chance. And so that's kind of what I'm going to use. Okay, so if we consider that Ole Miss has got a 1 in 2 chance of beating Arkansas. I mean, there's 2 teams on the field. They start at 0-0, so one of them's got to win and one of them's got to lose. Same thing with Mississippi State. But even if Ole Miss wins both those games, they've got to have a couple more things happen for them. And that involves some of these other games. For example, they really need Alabama to beat Mississippi State tomorrow. And so that would be another 1 in 2 game that they can't even control, but it's still a 50-50 shot. And they would also need Mississippi State to either possibly lose at Vanderbilt. Actually, no, they need Auburn really to lose at Georgia, because Ole Miss doesn't want to wind up in a 4-way tie with these other teams, because they'll lose out on the tiebreaker. So they really need Georgia to go ahead and knock Auburn to their 3rd loss. And if you were to multiply all this together, 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2, you get about a 6% chance for Mississippi State, or excuse me, for Ole Miss to be the SEC Western champion. And it's actually the same deal with Auburn. They got a 1/2 chance of beating Georgia, in theory, a 1/2 chance of beating Alabama. And they've also got to have 2 more games go their way. They need Ole Miss to beat Mississippi State later in the season. And again, that's something they can't control. And Chase, help me out. What else we need to happen for Auburn?
We need Alabama to beat Mississippi State.
That's right.
That's
Tomorrow, Alabama really needs, as bad as we have to say that as a War Eagle fan, we got to have Alabama beat Mississippi State tomorrow. So honestly, same fractions. There's 4 things that really need to happen for Auburn to be able to be the SEC Western champion. Now, Alabama's case is much simpler. If you want to do that, Chase.
So what we have here is all Alabama has to do is they have to beat Mississippi State, and then they have the tiebreaker with Mississippi State. So that'll help them out, and then beat Auburn, and that's all they have to happen is so Alabama is one of 2 teams that controls its own destiny here. Just multiply that, and you get 1/4, which is equal to 25%. And here with Mississippi State, they have a 1/2 chance of beating Alabama tomorrow. And
in theory.
In theory, yes. And if they beat Alabama tomorrow, that's really it, because how Coach Henderson explained it to me was, it's like having 50% of chance of rain on this day and this day. They just got to win one of them. So those really cancel each other out, and it ends up being 50% for Mississippi State.
That's correct.
And I'm going to pick my predictions here. Some of y'all will find them a little bit crazy, but I've watched a lot of these teams play a couple of games and how the matchups will end up. So I got Alabama beating Mississippi State, and how I'm going to do this is, out of 100 times, how many times do I think Alabama will beat them? I think Alabama will probably beat Mississippi State 70 times, 70%, which is equal to 0.7, so I'm going to be putting it in decimal form. And they've got about 30 out of 100 times they would probably win it. This Vanderbilt game up here, I'm going to give them probably 90 out of 100 times they're going to win that. It's a pretty good game. And since this game is at Ole Miss, I'm probably going to have them only winning it 40 out of 60 60 times, giving it to Ole Miss. Auburn, Alabama, that's it's a home game for Alabama, and Alabama's played much better at home than they have on the road, so that probably gives them the edge over Auburn. I'd say probably about 65 out of 100 times, which means they'd only win it about 35.
All right. And Chase, what I'm gonna show people, we said a while ago that Alabama had, in theory, had a 25% chance of beating both these games, if you just go by theory. But just to show you the difference in what Chase is talking about, he's talking more about what you can expect to happen. So I would take a calculator, and instead of timing 0.50 times 0.50 to get 25%, what we did, I could take 0.70 and I time that by 0.65. You always multiply multiple probabilities and write that percent. That's about 46% chance for Alabama. In Chase's opinion, there's a 46% chance for Alabama to actually win the SEC Western Division, instead of 25%. And that's the way you can kind of calculate that. You do the same thing. You time 0.3 times 0.9 times 0.4, assuming Mississippi State needs to win out.
And I'm going to go ahead and go through with the rest of my picks.
All right, go ahead.
Georgia, Auburn. Auburn's probably a little bit of a better team at the moment. But the game is in Athens, so I'm going to give that one to Georgia 55 out of 100 times. Arkansas. This will surprise most of y'all. We've seen Arkansas run it close with Mississippi State, Alabama, and Texas A&M. Georgia smoked them, by the way, just for you, Ethan. And Auburn, they ran close with them in the first half. So I'm going to give it to Arkansas 51 out of 100 times, just barely beating them. And then Mississippi State, I had them coming off the loss here, coming out and beating them just because it's at home. If y'all want to take a screenshot of it, do whatever. If you're watching it, pause it, calculate these percentages for yourself.